The Legacy Superhero Season 1, Episode 2, Power in the Wrong Hands. As soon as I pressed the red button, bright blue energy immediately flowed out of the watch down my arm onto my body. It felt really strange, like being soaked with water, but I didn't get wet. The energy covered my entire body, except for my mouth and eyes. I looked down at my body, which was now covered from head to toe in this weird blue energy, and then the energy flashed so brightly that I had to close my eyes to avoid going blind. But the flash soon faded away, and I opened my eyes to get a better look at my clothing. I was shocked by what I saw. My body was glowing. No, not my body, but the red and blue bodysuit which now covered my body. I was still wearing my normal clothes underneath, but I now had a strange spandex suit which covered my whole body like a second skin. And, while I wasn't the most muscular guy around, the spandex did show off my muscles quite well, with a stylized TW emblazoned on my chest. A quick glance over my shoulder showed that I had a red cape now, of all things, though I had no idea where it came from. It looked pretty cool, though. "What the heck?" I said, looking at my new clothes in confusion. "Where did all of this stuff come from? It's tight." "Hey!" Rodriguez shouted from the other side of the door. "Brat, what was that flash of light? You've got a one-man light show going on in there or something?" "Brat's probably calling the police on his phone," said another injector. "Get him before he ruins everything." All of a sudden, there was more banging and pulling at the door. This time, I could tell that all three of the injectors were working together to open it. With their combined strength, they would probably succeed, and once they did, I would definitely be screwed, even with my new clothes that just magically appeared out of nowhere. Once again, I looked around for an exit, but I saw none. Damn it. I never gave much thought to how I would die. I guess I just assumed I would die of old age or something. I didn't expect to get gunned down by a bunch of drug dealers while hiding in someone's garden shed like a little kid playing hide and seek. Even Thomas' death by melted skin was more dignified than that. "You're tougher than you think, kid," said grandfather's voice in my head again. "Much tougher. The watch didn't just give you a new get-up, you know." Before I could ask the voice what it meant by that, strength poured through my body. It was like drinking a big cup of coffee in the morning. I became more alert, with a clearer mind, and felt like I could bench press a diesel truck 50 times if I had to. My sudden increase in strength almost scared me, but more than anything, it filled me with confidence. All of my previous fear vanished, replaced by the feeling that I could handle whatever these injector guys would throw at me. The only question was, could they handle me? Suddenly, the front door was ripped off its hinges, allowing light from outside to pour in. One of the injectors appeared in the doorway, gun in hand, but as soon as he saw me, his eyes widened and he said, "Wait a minute. You're not the brat. Where did the brat go? And who the hell are you?" I smiled. "I'm your dentist." I smashed my fist directly into the injector's jaw. I expected the injector to fall flat on his back and maybe also fall unconscious, where he would remain until the police came by to arrest him. But he actually flew backwards, head over heels through the air, until he crashed into and through the wooden fence surrounding the house. "What the hell?" Rodriguez shouted. "Cristiano, what happened? Cristiano, can you hear us?" I was just as stunned as the injectors by what I just did. I looked at my fist in awe, wondering if any of this was real or if this was part of some weird dream and I was still back home in my bed. "This is real all right, kid," said grandfather's voice again. "But I wouldn't get too distracted. Those injectors might be shocked now, but they'll get over their shock soon. And once they do, they'll want to avenge their friend. Please don't waste the opportunities that fate gives you." Grandfather, or his voice or whatever it was right. I shook my head and leaped out of the shed, coming to a landing right between the remaining two injectors, Rodriguez and the other one, whose name I didn't know. They immediately turned their guns on me when I appeared, but rather than fire, they just stared at me with absolute bewilderment. "Who the hell are you?" said Rodriguez. "You're not the brat." "You're right," I said, rising to my feet. "I'm not a brat. I'm a hero, and I'm going to kick your asses." Rodriguez scowled. "Pedro, kill him." Pedro, who must have been the other injector, raised his gun, but I whirled around, kicking the gun out of his hand and sending it flying to the other side of the yard, where it landed safely out of reach. Then I followed up with a kick to the gut, which, like my earlier punch, sent Pedro flying. He crashed into the ground so hard that he actually made a shallow crater, where he lay in a heap, clearly unconscious from the impact. Whirling around to face Rodriguez, I saw him raise his gun and fire. I jumped into the air, going high enough to avoid the bullet, and landed on top of the roof of the nearby house behind Rodriguez. My landing wasn't entirely smooth, however. I nearly lost my balance upon landing on the tiles, though I grabbed onto the chimney for support. But then Rodriguez turned around and started firing at me. I fell behind the chimney, which was thick enough to catch the bullets, but Rodriguez still had me pinned down. I cursed myself for jumping like that, because it just left me stuck again, and it was only a matter of time before Rodriguez got me. "Please don't be so hard on yourself," said Grandfather again. "See that loose tile? Pick it up and throw it at him. Trust me, it will be hilarious." "Hilarious?" I said aloud because I wasn't sure how to speak to Grandfather in my mind. I cringed at the sound of bullets striking the brick chimney. "I'll get shot." "Not if you're fast," said Grandfather. "You don't even have to think about it. Just grab that tile and throw it as hard as you can at him. Don't worry about aim either. It will work out on its own." I looked at the loose tile before me, the one the voice told me to grab. I didn't understand what he meant about not worrying about aiming, but I decided that if the voice in my head had been right about pressing the button, then it was probably right about this, too. Even so, I made a mental note to ask Mom and Dad to send me to therapy, because I was pretty sure that hearing voices in your head was the first sign of insanity. Snatching up the tile, I peered around the side of the chimney and saw that my situation had gotten worse. Rodriguez wasn't alone. 4 other injectors had entered the backyard, each one armed with what looked like a machine gun, and they were all setting up around various parts of the yard. I realized they were getting ready to strike me from multiple angles, which would definitely increase their chances of killing me. "There's more of them," I said, whispering because I didn't want the injectors to hear me. "How is this tile supposed to help me take out all of them?" "Don't worry," said Grandfather. "Just throw it at the shed and let your powers do the rest." I bit my lower lip, but again, decided to trust the voice. I aimed at the roof of the shed and hurled the tile with all of my might. As the tile left my hands, however, I thought I felt some of my energy pass into it, though I didn't quite understand what that meant. I just knew that the tile flew straight and true toward the roof of the shed, like a drone. The tile struck the roof, but rather than harmlessly bounce off, it ricocheted. It hit the top branches of a nearby tree, bounced off the side of the house, and flew straight toward one of the injectors, who had just enough time to glance in its general direction before the tile struck him in the forehead and knocked him flat off his feet. But the tile wasn't done yet. It flew toward another injector, who raised his machine gun to fire on it, but the tile flew over his gun's barrel and struck him directly in the nose. He collapsed onto the ground in an embarrassing heap, while the other 2 new injectors turned to see what had happened to their friend, only for the tile to bounce between both of their faces and knock both of them out cold. That left Rodriguez, who had just enough time to look at his fallen comrades before the tile flew toward him. Unfortunately, the tile didn't hit him, because Rodriguez ducked at the last second, allowing the renegade roof tile to fly harmlessly over his head. "What in the hell was that?" said Rodriguez. He looked up at me and scowled. Did you throw the tile? If so, it didn't work. I'm still standing, even if you took out all of my other comrades." I smiled. "Don't count your eggs before they hatch." Rodriguez tilted his head to the side, like he didn't understand what I meant, but then the tile hit the shed door behind him and bounced off it. It hit him in the back of the head so hard that Rodriguez fell face first onto the ground, where he lay as still as a stone. I just stared at the scene below me uncomprehendingly. 7 injectors, the toughest of the tough, some of the most dangerous and murderous criminals alive, lay scattered around the backyard in various states of unconsciousness. The roof tile I had thrown now lay on the ground next to Rodriguez. It looked pretty harmless at the moment, but I now knew that roof tiles could be dangerous weapons in the right hands. Or at least in my hands anyway. Speaking of my hands, how did I even do that? I could barely even bounce a ball off a wall, yet I had made that square tile bounce all over the backyard like everything was made of rubber. Even stranger, the tile itself looked okay, not even cracked from bouncing off of so many hard surfaces. "Good job, kid," said Grandfather again. "For a newbie, you sure got the hang of that quick. You're almost a natural, though you still have a long way to go before you'll have complete control over it." "Are you real?" I said aloud. "Are you really Grandfather? Or am I just going insane?" Grandfather chuckled. "Could be both. The McDonald family line is known for going crazy at 16. It's a family tradition, mostly because it's genetic and crops up every now and then like bad acne. Speaking of acne, you've got too much of it." "You can't really be Grandfather," I said, "because Grandfather would never give me skincare advice." "It's just a joke, son," said Grandfather. "Kids these days are so high-strung, I swear. But never mind that. I think you should get back down to the yard and ditch the costume." "Why?" I said, looking down at the costume I wore. "It's kind of tight, but it also looks kind of cool. Because the police are going to be here soon and the last thing they need to see is you in costume, said Grandfather. They'd ask too many questions you don't have the answer to right now. Best to play the part of the scared teenager who has no idea how these guys got defeated. I frowned. If I do that, will you explain who you really are and what this costume is? I already had my suspicions, but I didn't want to say them aloud just yet in case they were wrong. Sure, said Grandfather. It will be my birthday present to you. Only I won't be able to wrap it up in a box and put a bow on top. You won't mind, though, will you? Either Grandfather had more of a sense of humor than I remembered, or this guy actually wasn't Grandfather at all. Regardless, he had a point about getting rid of my costume. The last thing I needed was to explain my getup, mostly because I couldn't even explain it myself right now. So I jumped off of the roof and, landing on the ground, was about to make my way over to the shed when I heard a ringing noise coming from somewhere. It sounded like someone's ringtone, but when I looked around, I could not see where it might be coming from. Soon, however, I noticed it was coming from Rodriguez's pocket. It must have been his cell phone ringing, but I had no idea who could be calling him. Probably one of his fellow Injectors, perhaps checking to find out the current status of their mission. Or maybe it was his boss, Michael Jones, calling for the same reason. It made sense. My own research of the Injectors indicated that Jones worked closely even with the lowest members of the organization. If I answered the call, I might be able to find out why the Injectors attacked the bus in the first place, and maybe even find Jones himself. I walked over to Rodriguez's unconscious body and fished his smartphone out of his back right pocket. As I suspected, the number on the screen was listed as boss, so I swiped right to answer and held the phone to my ear. Hello? Rodriguez? Said a deep, calm voice on the other end, which I assumed was Jones. I have not heard from you since you left headquarters this morning. How is the mission going? I could not help but crack a smile and look down at Rodriguez, who still lay very unconscious at my feet. Gee, boss, I don't know, I've got a splitting headache, you see, so I'm probably going to go home after this and take a long nap. You wouldn't happen to have any pain meds, would ya? 'Cause I'm going to need them later. You don't sound even remotely like Rodriguez, said Jones, who sounded both alarmed and annoyed now. Who are you and where's Rodriguez? To answer your second question, Rodriguez is currently indisposed, I said, glancing around the backyard, as are the 6 other guys who helped him. As for who I am, my voice trailed off. I knew I couldn't just give him my actual name, but at the same time, I didn't know what else to tell him. Clearly, I was now a superhero of some sort, but at this point I didn't know what my superhero name was. I was pretty terrible at improv, so I didn't trust myself to come up with a cool name on the spot. But when I looked at the TW insignia on my chest, I suddenly knew, without even thinking about it, what name to give Jones. My smile never leaving my lips, I said, I'm Trickshot, and I'm going to take down your entire operation piece by piece. Before Jones could respond, I dropped the phone onto the ground and smashed it under my heel. What was that? Said Grandfather, who sounded genuinely bewildered by my actions. I smiled. A declaration of war. What else? As it turned out, I didn't have to wait long inside the shed before the sound of police sirens could be heard roaring down the street toward my location. A few minutes later, the backyard was crawling with police officers and even SWAT members, who had come in response to the news that the Injectors were behind this attack. Of course, I had gotten rid of my Trickshot costume long before any law enforcement officers showed up. Taking it off was as simple as putting it on. I just pressed the red button under the face of the watch and the suit disappeared from my body, making me look like an ordinary teenage boy again. But I still had to pretend I was an ordinary teenage boy to the police. That required shaking and even faking some tears, as well as stuttering a lot to show that I was rattled by everything that happened. It was easier than I thought, because despite how thrilling that fight had been, the adrenaline wore off very quickly and my whole body shook with fear and exhaustion. Luckily, the police did not pay much attention to the Trickshot Watch, which I guess they didn't notice, or maybe thought was just an ordinary watch. They did, however, question me to find out if I knew who defeated all of the Injectors. I told them that I didn't know, that I'd been hiding inside the shed the entire time, and didn't see a thing due to the lack of windows. I told them that I heard someone who might have been a superhero beating up the Injectors, but I couldn't tell them who it was. The police seemed to think it was Bug Bite, the local superhero of Rumsfeld, though given how Bug Bite was apparently busy with another crime on the other side of the city at the time, that theory was a lot less plausible than it first seemed. The reason I lied was because Grandfather told me to. He told me that I needed to keep the true power of the Trickshot Watch under wraps for now, because he was afraid of the police taking the watch from me as evidence. It was easy enough for me to lie about, because I didn't want anyone knowing about my new secret identity yet, because there was still a lot I didn't know about the watch and how it worked. I did learn, however, that thanks to my efforts, not a single student on the bus had been killed or even harmed. Apparently, as soon as the Injectors jumped off the bus and chased me, Mr. Smith woke up and managed to drive the bus all the way to the school itself before he lost consciousness again, forcing some of the students to call 911. The police told me that Mr. Smith was currently in Rumsfeld General, where he was expected to undergo surgery for his gunshot wound, surgery he was expected to survive. It was a relief to hear that everyone was okay, but not surprising. The Injectors had only sent 3 people to take over the bus. After all, even if there had been 6 overall, it only made sense that Mr. Smith would take advantage of their absence to escape. Stopping the Injectors before they shot him would have been better, I guess, but what happened. There's no changing it. In any case, I didn't actually have to go back to school. Though I was unharmed, which the police apparently found surprising, I shook enough that they decided that I was in no mental condition to go to school today. Instead, one of the officers, a nice 20-something dude named Henry, escorted me in his police cruiser back to my parents' house, which was pretty cool, because I always wanted to ride in a police cruiser. When we got back to my house, Mom was practically insane with worry over me, because she'd apparently received a phone call from the police a few minutes ago and had been worried sick about me. She hugged me so tightly that she nearly crushed the air out of me, even though I told her I was perfectly fine. Officer Henry explained the situation to Mom, who listened intently, while I interjected every now and then to provide details that Officer Henry didn't know, though I was mostly quiet, because I wanted to get back to my room to talk to Grandfather. "So, they're all under arrest," said Mom when Officer Henry finished his story. "All 3 of us standing on the front porch in front of my house. Every last one of them?" "Yes, ma'am," said Henry, nodding. He stood on our front porch with his hands in his pockets, looking quite relaxed despite the tense situation. "You don't have to worry about any of them coming after you or your son anytime soon." "What about the other members of their gang?" said Mom. "Won't they come after us to avenge their friends?" "That doesn't seem likely," said Henry. He nodded at me. "Your son here wasn't the one who beat their friends up. It was someone else, so I bet the Injectors are going to look around for him instead of you or your son. Still, I would recommend getting a gun, if you don't have one already." "My husband has 3, Mom interrupted, "and we all know how to shoot them." "Good," said Henry, who looked slightly taken aback by Mom's promptness. "In any case, just take basic safety precautions and you should be fine. And if you see anything suspicious, just call us up and let us know. We'll be happy to help." "Thank you, officer, for bringing my son home safely," said Mom. She clutched my shoulders with a surprisingly firm grip. "When I heard his bus was attacked by the Injectors, I thought he was a goner for sure." "You're welcome, miss," said Henry. "Now, I need to go back to HQ and file a report. But if you see anything suspicious, please feel free to let us know. We're just as committed to putting the Injectors behind bars as anyone, especially if they're going to start threatening our children like this." With that, Henry turned around and walked down the steps to his car, which was parked at the curb. He hopped into his cruiser, waved goodbye at both of us, and then turned on his car and drove off down the street out of sight. Mom sighed in relief when Henry left. Good God. Of all of the bad things that could have happened today, I never thought that the Injectors would attack your bus. When I heard that name over the phone, I thought for sure that I was going to be told that the Injectors had blown up the bus or gunned down everyone inside. "It's fine, Mom," I said, gently brushing her hands off my shoulders. "The Injectors weren't looking to kill anyone this time, I think. They just thought that we had something they were looking for." "And what were they looking for?" said Mom. "Did they say?" I shrugged. "No, they didn't. I think they were probably looking for power, however. I bet one of the other students stole some from them and they were just trying to get it back before it was used up or sold to someone else. I know that Robbie Mattis just got arrested for possessing that drug last night." Mom shook her head in disappointment. "I just don't understand why so many kids these days want such a dangerous drug. When Thomas died last year, I read a bunch of articles and books on power and how it's ruined so many lives. With all of that information out there, why would anyone ever even consider using that stuff?" I shrugged again. "I guess a lot of people just want to be special, especially younger people, but they don't want to work for it. Or maybe they think it will make their life more interesting or something." "I suppose," said Mom, frowning. "Still, I wish the government would do something about it. That drug has taken far too many promising young lives for it to be tolerated anymore." "I know, Mom. I know," I said. I glanced at the empty driveway and then back at Mom. Where is Dad? Is he still at work? Mom nodded. Yes. I tried to call him, but my call just went to voicemail, so I left him a message telling him to call me back as soon as he gets a chance. I bet he'll get off work early just to come back home and make sure you're okay. Right, I said, though deep down I was a little pleased with this information, because it meant I wouldn't have to wait to talk to Grandfather. Well, I'm going to be up in my room for now. All of the excitement of the past hour or so has left me tired out, so I'm going to take a nap. Okay, said Mom. I need to get your birthday cake out of the freezer. Anyway, it should be ready to eat by dinner time, but if you need to sleep the rest of the day, you can do so and we'll just have cake tomorrow. Nah, I'll definitely be ready to have cake later, I said, but thanks anyway. I really appreciate your concern. Before Mom could say anything else, I went back into the house, up the stairs and into my room. I closed and locked the door to my room quickly, and then sat on my bed. Okay, Grandfather, I'm ready when you are. At first, I didn't see anything, but then Grandfather flickered into view like a hologram. He was leaning against my desk, his arms crossed in front of his chest, a mischievous little grin on his aging features. Hi, Jack, said Grandfather. Oh, and happy birthday, before I forget. I hope you'll remember to leave some of that ice cream cake for me later, because it sounds delicious. But you're just a hologram, I said. You can't eat. It was just a joke, son, said Grandfather. You take things too literally sometimes, just like your father when he was your age. I scowled. So you are a hologram, then? Grandfather shrugged. Technically, I'm an advanced artificial intelligence that is mimicking the appearance, behavior, and mannerisms of the real Gregory MacDonald. That is, your grandfather. I only take this form in order to make you feel safer around me, but I can take other forms if you like. My shoulders slumped. So you're not really Grandfather at all. You're just a really fancy computer simulation? More or less, said Grandfather. To be your actual grandfather would require Gregory MacDonald to download his consciousness into the watch, but because that's currently beyond the limits of modern technology, he couldn't do it. So he made me instead his personal AI assistant who exists to serve him and any other users of the Trickshot Watch. I frowned. You're awfully intelligent for an AI. Because I'm not made entirely of human technology, said Grandfather. He waved his hand. But I will get into that later. For now, I assume you wish to know about the status of your actual grandfather. I nodded. Yeah, but first, can you give me your real name? I don't want to keep calling you Grandfather if that's not what you actually are. Very well, said Grandfather. He put a hand on his chest. You can call me TW? TW, I said. For Trickshot Watch? Yes, said TW. Technically, I don't have a proper name. TW's just what your grandfather always called me. I'm used to it, so I don't mind being called that name. I see, I said. Okay, TW, let's get to the most important question. Is Grandfather still alive? TW nodded. He is. I breathed a sigh of relief. Whew. For a moment I was worried that you might say he was dead. But he's not free, said TW. Not anymore, anyway. What do you mean? I said. Is he in prison? Did the federal government really arrest him after all? TW shook his head. No, not the government. Another organization did, one that has nothing to do with the government. They are called ICON. Have you heard of them? I shook my head. No, I haven't. Who are they? A secret organization, said TW very covert, to the point where the vast majority of people on the planet have never even heard of them. They're so secret that even I don't know everything they're trying to do. But I do know that they captured your grandfather and are holding him captive even as we speak. Why did they capture Grandfather? I said. Are they holding him hostage? TW unfolded his arms and pushed himself off the desk. He began pacing back and forth in front of me, as if trying to think about how to answer my question. To answer your question, I need to go back to the beginning, to the very start of your grandfather, Trickshot's career. You know that he was once the superhero Trickshot, yes? Of course, I said. Everyone in my family does. Heck, everyone in Rumsfeld knows that. TW stopped and looked at me curiously. But did anyone ever tell you how he became Trickshot? I frowned. Well, I assume he just passed the superhero exam and got injected with superpower, like everyone else. He did pass the superhero exam, that's true, and was injected with superpower. That is also true, said TW. But there is a lot more to his story than that, and it involves the watch you're currently wearing on your wrist. I looked down at the Trickshot watch. This? I'm pretty sure grandfather just wore this as part of his costume, right? Wrong, TW said. The Trickshot Watch is more than just a fancy bit of technology. It is the source of Trickshot's powers itself. What? Really? I said in surprise. That doesn't make sense. Technology can't give you powers. Only drugs like superpower can. Then how did you manage to use Trickshot's powers earlier? Said TW. You used almost all of them. Super strength, perfect aim, and even durability. You also partially flew. It looked like a jump, but you were actually using very limited flight to help you jump greater distances that you normally could. I opened my mouth to argue, but when TW put it that way, I had a hard time disagreeing. So instead, I said, but how does that work? I've never heard of a superhero gaining their powers from technology or a costume. The world is a lot bigger than you think, TW replied. Earlier, I said that the Trickshot Watch is not entirely made of human technology. What I meant by that was that the watch and the suit it creates were found 50 years ago in a crashed alien spaceship found in Nevada. Wait, now you're telling me aliens exist? I said in disbelief. Come on, everyone knows that aliens aren't real. TW smiled. Believe what you want, but this is the truth. Let me show you a hologram of the alien spaceship in question. TW held out a hand, and another, smaller hologram appeared in his palm. It was a hologram of what looked like a crashed spaceship half buried underneath tons of sand. It looked almost like a regular NASA spaceship, but then I noticed that it was shaped more like a saucer than a rocket, and seemed much bigger than any spacecraft created by humans. All right, I believe you, I said. So the suit was the source of grandfather's powers, not superpower? Exactly, said TW. He closed his fist and the hologram vanished. The suit itself is made out of pure energy, as you noticed when you first put it on. It instantly adapts to the weight, size, and body shape of the user, meaning that anyone who uses the watch can wear it easily. Cool, I said. But why was grandfather given the watch in the first place? That, I do not know, said TW. I know that Gregory wanted to become a superhero, but I don't know the exact circumstances under which he received it. All I know is that I was programmed to serve him or anyone else who uses the watch. Beyond that, I know nothing. But you do know why grandfather sent me the watch, I said, and you know where he is. Yes and no, said TW. Yes, I know why your grandfather sent you the watch, but no, I don't know where he is. What? I said. How can you not know where he is? Because I have no way to track him, said T-Wub with a shrug. Or his location, for that matter. The watch does have limited tracking capabilities, but in order for me to track anyone, I need to be able to access any computers or devices they have on them. Gregory doesn't have any tech on him at the moment. As well, I believe that Icon is blocking my tracking tech, though I don't know for sure. I folded my arms across my chest. I had hoped that TW might help me find grandfather when he told me he had belonged to him. But now, it was obvious that I would never find grandfather, at least not anytime soon. All right, tell me why grandfather sent you to me. He wanted you to protect Rumsfeld from a threat, said TW. I raised an eyebrow. Could you be a bit more specific about what threat he's referring to? Because there are lots of things that threaten Rumsfeld. Drug dealers, crime, businesses closing down, all of these things are pretty threatening in their own right. TW shrugged again. I don't know for sure what threat Gregory wanted you to defeat. I only know what he told me, and he didn't tell me much, because getting me out of the place where he is held captive required a lot of effort and secrecy on his part. I believe it had something to do with the Injectors, however. Really? I said. I leaned forward. Can you elaborate on that? I seem to recall Gregory mentioning something about the Injectors posing a threat to Rumsfeld, said TW, but I don't know for sure. All I know is that I was given the task of helping you to use your new powers to defend Rumsfeld. But Rumsfeld already has a superhero, I said. Doesn't grandfather know that? I am not sure, said TW. It doesn't seem likely to me that he does, given how long Gregory has been in captivity with little connection to the outside world. Regardless, Gregory wants you to have the watch and to learn how to use its powers in order to become Rumsfeld's newest protector. I thought about that. TW's story was really wild, almost impossible to believe, but at the same time, I had seen too much evidence of weird stuff happening to just dismiss it as a prank or some kind of deception. I believed that TW was really telling me the truth, or as much of the truth as he knew anyway. I still had a lot of questions that even TW could not answer, but at the same time I was already starting to see the possibilities that the watch would give me. With the powers of Trickshot at my command, I would be able to not only fight the Injectors, but maybe even defeat them. I could avenge Thomas and free Rumsfeld of its power problem. Bug Bite might have failed to stop them, but the Injectors wouldn't know what hit them, especially once I mastered these new powers and became really proficient at using them. Sounds great, I said, looking up at TW again. Stopping the Injectors is a noble cause, and, while I've never really wanted to be a superhero, I think being a superhero could be a lot of fun. I accept. Excellent, said TW, nodding. Gregory told me that you would accept once I explained the situation to you. It seems that you are more like your grandfather than even he knows. I smiled. Well, what can I say? Maybe fighting crime really does run in the blood after all. The end of the Legacy Superhero Season 1, Episode 2, Power in the Wrong Hands.